Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Mr. Dan and Horror YouTube channel for another film review. Today will be something a little different. It's a double film review. Both of these films are kind of short and sweet at 72 minutes and 78 minutes respectively. And they are both early Hammer Studios films directed by Terence Fisher, who is more widely known for some of the horror fare, some of which you see in front of you now, that Hammer is more widely known for. The majority of the Hammer Film Studios catalog is actually not horror. It's pretty close, but a lot of their early films were actually crime-based dramas, which both of these are. I found both of these on YouTube for free on the Sprocket Vault channel, where they have a lot of older films for free. And the first one is from 1952. They're both from 1952, to be honest with you. The first one is Stolen Face, and as I said, these are both directed by Terence Fisher. And Stolen Face is a fun little movie. At 72 minutes, it goes by quick, maybe a little too quick, but we'll get to the ending in a moment. And basically, you have Paul Heinride as Dr. Philip Ritter, and along with his friend David, who is also a doctor, played by Andre Morel. They have pioneered some new plastic surgery techniques, and they're working in a clinic for another older doctor who's very appreciative of the new client base that they now have. Early in the film, an older woman comes in to seek a consultation on yet another plastic surgery operation, and the doctors actually take a look at her and say they can't recommend it. She's had too much plastic surgery. And I think they do this to establish that these are, upstanding doctors who are trying to, follow the Hippocratic Oath and do the right thing. And there's some really funny, witty, back and forth kind of dialogue that you really only get in some of these early British films. When the woman comes in, the one doctor, David, says, "Oh, I know your brother, the Admiral," and she just says, "Horrible man." And he turns his head to the side and tries not to laugh. It's pretty funny. At any rate, the main crux of the story is that these doctors are really very into these new techniques, to the point where Dr. Ritter, played by Paul Heinride, who we know from Casablanca, Victor Laszlo, he gets burned out, so he has to go on vacation, where he meets a woman named Alice, and she's quite lovely, and but she's also under the weather, so he begins to sort of take care of her, because her sneezing in the next room is kind of keeping him up all night. So, long story short, they begin a romance. When the vacation is over, the intent is that they keep in touch, but she is keeping a secret from him, and that is that she is engaged to her, sort of like her manager. She's a singer, by the way. So he tries to reach her and is told that she's unavailable. I think, and he receives a letter from her that pretty much says, "I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go ahead and marry the other guy." So he's heartbroken. Meanwhile, he has consulted a woman named Lily, who's played by Mary Mackenzie, and she's a prison inmate who's badly disfigured. And I wouldn't be surprised if the makers of the film Johnny Handsome from the 80s with Forrest Whitaker and Mickey Rourke, I wouldn't be surprised if they had seen this film, because the idea is, well, maybe if we essentially give her a new face, maybe she'll turn her life around. So they take pity on her, and Dr. Ritter goes ahead and does the operation, and he just can't help himself. When he reconstructs her face, he makes her face look just like that of Alice. And then on top of that, she's very appreciative because Alice is very pretty. On top of that, he goes ahead and marries her, with the idea that now she is a changed woman. And, yes, her accent is a little bit different. So now you have the actress that played Alice. Her voice is now dubbed by Mary Mackenzie, who has more of a Cockney accent. So the problem is, she's still a bit of a con woman. So she's going along with it. And until it's time to sort of exploit the doctor and try to link up with some of her old friends from the underworld and concoct a few schemes. I mean, she just can't help herself. That's who she is. Meanwhile, Alice has had second thoughts, and what do you think she does? She contacts Dr. Ritter, and now he's torn, right? So what does he do? He's got a woman that looks like Alice, that has a destructive personality, and now he's got the real Alice who says she wants to come back to him. So the film plays out, and the climax is on a train, and it's rather kind of hurried, and the very end of the climax is kind of contrived a little bit. I mean, it's just like, boom, over. But I did enjoy it. It's a good time. The tagline is, "A criminal psychopath remodeled for love." Now, let's move on to the next film. The next film, the tagline could actually be the title, and it pretty much sums up the whole plot. Blonde Blackmail is the tagline for the 1952 film Man Bait, starring Diana Dors as Ruby. I guess she was an up-and-coming young starlet. Maybe her career didn't turn into everything that it was thought that it could have, but she's young and attractive, and unfortunately she's kind of scheming, and she basically works in a bookstore with a man which is owned by a man named John, played by George Brent, and there's a manager named Clive, who's played by Raymond Huntley, who was the uncle in The Mummy. So he kind of acts he's like Ramrod Straight in all business, you know. I love a lot of the dialogue in these old British films. And Ruby, you know, she's not the model, the best employee in the world. She's late a little bit here and there, and she has to be scolded. And then a con man named Jeffrey Hart, played by Peter Reynolds, saunters in one day, and they've already established that there's some rare books in there because the manager is scolding another young employee, a man, about not locking up a cabinet with some rare volumes in it. And then the George Brent character, who's a little bit easier on the employees and kind of forgetful. And by the way, he has a wife at home who is bedridden, so he's a bit distracted. He comes in, he goes, "Oh, I'm the one that forgot to lock the cabinet." So we've established that there's some rare books in the cabinet. So Ruby catches this guy, Jeffrey. He grabs a key and he's trying to get into the cabinet. She catches him, but she lets him go. And later she sees him in a club at night. Meanwhile, she has had a little incident with John, where in just a moment of indiscretion, they actually kissed. And at one point, she actually ripped her shirt, her blouse. So then she comes back the next day and she goes, "Oh, as a matter of fact, not only did you rip my blouse, but now I have a bruise and you tried to kiss me and I need some money." So she tries to blackmail him. And in typical British fashion, John just is not having it. He pretty much shuts her down. But then she goes back to this criminal that she's hooked up with, and he really decides he's going to turn up the volume. So she goes back again, and now they want like 400 pounds. Not even sure how much that is, but they want more money, and now they resort to blackmail. And I'm not really going to say too much more about the rest of the plot, but there's another woman in the bookstore, Stella, played by Marguerite Chapman, who is actually very attractive, and she has a relationship with John. She, after the war, she was his nurse when he was recuperating. It's a bit contrived and a bit, you know, in both of these films you have some soap opera type elements. So her character becomes a little bit more prominent towards the end, where she's basically trying to help George stay ahead of this scheme, which eventually involves murder. Eventually there's a body in a trunk, and, you know, there's a scene where people are taking the trunk out, but then they find the books that they thought were in the trunk. Well, why was the trunk heavy if the books weren't in it? And the police are getting involved, and John is kind of on the run. The manager, Clive, played by Raymond Huntley, he's all business, so I'm not sure we can trust him or not. And Stella, his who probably secretly has a crush on him, she's more apt to help him. And there's a fiery conclusion, and it's pretty good. It's actually a pretty decent conclusion. Some characters fade away, and then other characters sort of assert themselves more towards the end. So it's kind of uneven in that way. But there you have it, Man Bait. I believe this was, I think Man Bait was Terence Fisher's first film, actually. Or maybe just the first film for Hammer. But, yeah, you know, very competently made. Fun films. You know, if you're curious about some early Hammer efforts, definitely check these out, and check out the Sprocket's Vault channel to see what other offerings they have. Has anyone heard of any of these films or any of these actors or actresses? I guess Diana Dors, like I said, was supposed to be a big star, and it didn't quite work out. Interesting thing, let's go back to Stolen Face for a minute. When Lily is made to look like Alice, the other actress, Mary McKenzie, who played Lily in the beginning with the disfigured place, dubs over the voice of Alice. So she has still has the same voice, which is what you might expect. But again, both films very good. Have you guys seen either one of these? Are you fans of any of the actors or actresses that I mentioned? What are some of your favorite non-Hammer horror films? Let me know in the comments below. Have a nice day. Thanks a lot for watching.